All right. Morning, Rob.
Morning, Charlie. How do you like my new beard? Does it make me
It's pretty
look
good.
distinguished?
It's pretty gray.
My wife says she likes it because it smells good. It's driving me crazy. It gets about this long and I gotta cut it off. I can't take it much longer.
I've been trying to convince my wife to let me grow a mustache again for years, and she's strictly against it. I'm a big fan. It doesn't look very good on me, but I like it as a deterrent, if nothing else.
I was talking to someone we both know, and he's kind of worried about losing hair. And I said, "Well, Charlie, he can grow hair. Just he keeps it shaved no matter what." And he goes, "What? No way!" I said, "Yep." Um, how do you shave it? Do you have like one of those things you fit in your palm and then you shave it like that? Is that how it works?
No, just regular old razor.
Trailer, you're flexible enough to do it. Did your wife do it for you?
No, it takes me I think about 30 seconds to knock it out.
Is that just every time you get in the shower?
No, just whenever it's looking long. I'm as low maintenance on that kind of stuff as it takes. I guess shaving your head every couple of days is technically high maintenance, but I just don't think about it ever.
When you go to the beach, you got to put sunscreen on your scalp. Just wear a hat.
I don't even think about it. This is
You
how
ever had,
this is
you ever had like a sunburn head bad? You just like peeling?
if I'm putting it on my face, I'm just going doing the whole thing one go. I do the same thing with like aftershave. It's the same. Shave my face and my head at the same time. It's just an extension.
You put on aftershave?
I put on like a lotion, something like that.
What kind of lotion?
I don't know.
Oh, come
Whatever it.
on. Come
No, no, really.
on. You don't
I
just go to
really,
this.
truly. Yeah,
It's
yeah.
okay. It's okay if you put lotion on. I just want to know what brand it is. You
I
don't need to
have no.
be you don't
I
need to
will
be
be a
embarrassed
hundred
about
percent.
it.
I'll be 100% honest. I have no idea. It's whatever my wife buys.
Oh, she buys it for you.
Yeah,
Or
yeah,
do you
yeah.
put her lotion on?
No, I put. She's got some. I honestly have no idea what the name of the brand is. Something bullshit that's probably on the lowest shelf of the aisle.
You liar, probably cost you $120 a bottle.
No, fuck no. I don't buy. I'm cheap as hell. I don't buy anything expensive,
That's
especially when
going to
it
be a
comes
new
to
test for everybody else we
looks.
have on the podcast to see if they use lotion.
Yeah.
I remember getting an argument with my athletes at the gym one time, female athletes, if they pee in the shower. And there were several of them said they never peed in the shower. And then one lady said she heard a George Carlin skit, and he was like, "There's two types of people in this world, or people who pee in the shower and goddamn liars."
I think that's probably right. It's too easy.
Go ahead.
No, I'm cheap. I buy all my stuff secondhand, and even the shirt is like I buy it off of Gear Trader, which is you can buy good gear for 80% off. It's usually in great condition. I kind of apply that everywhere.
Yeah, Gear Trader's great. I sent him a bunch of stuff.
Yeah,
Stuff I don't use anymore.
yeah,
It's great. Yeah.
yeah. I'm probably buying your secondhand stuff.
Yeah, it's too loose on your chest, probably. It's too big for you.
All right, let's get started with the Ogden gym. So Emmett's kind of getting rolling with a couple of lab rats down there, and we've got some interns coming in. I think at the end of this month. So you want to give an update on what's going on down there?
Yeah, I was just with him down there yesterday, and we're still getting that thing going. We got a little bit of equipment in there that we need, and are getting going some lab rats, and we have some two interns arriving at the end of this month, intern slash mentorees, and kind of one more in a hopper, who I think his programming assignment was due today. So had several apply, and a couple didn't make it through the programming assignment test, and a couple bowed out. So we're excited. It's kind of an interesting and different and new type of facility. It's not necessarily to train athletes, it's more to test programming. So we need athletes in there. We're going to stick with the plan and test our programming for us. And then of course, Emmett, my son, the coach down there, and then the interns will also be their own lab rats. And so we've got some programming going on now that we're testing. We're going to talk about this a little bit, but I developed a new fitness assessment for like a part-time SWAT team. Lots of rural and smallish city. Well, just about every local police department out there has a SWAT team, and most of them are part time. So I developed a fitness assessment for one of those, and Emmett's going to lab rat one of the events down there for me, which is good because I'm too old to do some of that stuff now. Yeah, but we're grinding along, and if you listen to this and you know anybody in the Salt Lake Valley area, we're up in Ogden, which is north of Salt Lake. It's pretty close to the airport. Kind of a hidden little mountain community. The Wasatch Range is right there, lots of vertical right there. Snow basin, ski resort, just like 20 minutes away. Salt Lake and Alta, Snowbird, and other places, and little Cottonwood Canyon are really close. So it's kind of an interesting, hidden little community. A lot of people don't realize that Salt Lake is like that. Backcountry.com is down there on the hunting side. Easton Arrows and Black Ovis are out of there. There's just a bunch of Salt Lake. The whole Salt Lake Valley is just booming. It's been booming for quite a while. So we think it's a great place to test this concept out. So we're in the midst of testing it.
Nice. Um, so you're working on the carnivore diet right now. I think Brian was also on it. So what's the experience so far? I tested this out for a little bit and didn't exactly dig into it, but curious on how it's working for you.
Yeah, I was just thinking about that a long drag this morning about nutrition when it comes to athletes and how your metabolism slows as you age. And I think in my 20s, I could eat about anything I wanted. In my 30s, had to start cleaning it up. In 40s, I was full on to um, eating really strict and having one cheat day. The latter half of 40s, I started cutting some meals. In the 50s, kind of went to, I guess the one I've stuck with the longest is, my one meal a day, just a regular meal, no sugar, and, protein shakes for the rest of the day. And then I think I'm going on my third or fourth week of the carnivore diet, which is pretty much meat and butter and eggs and nothing else, and mostly beef. And, I had heard Rogan talk about this a little bit more. He tried it for a month, said he lost like 12 pounds and had raging diarrhea. And other people have done it. And I don't know, we were just driving back from to Wyoming from Ogden one time, me and my son, and we were listening to some guys talk about it. And I thought, yeah, I'll try that out. I'm kind of one of those guys who'll try that kind of stuff out. And it has so far of all my diets that I've tried, I guess, I don't know if I'm crazy, but I definitely experiment more than most people. Just because the fact is, I'm almost 57, and as you get older, your metabolism slows so much that you just can't eat as much as you used to, or else you'll just put weight on for whatever reason. You can't outwork a shitty diet, and especially when you get older. Anyway, so I
Can
jumped in
you
this.
can you explain like what is it?
It's pretty simple. It's pretty much no vegetables, grain, or any kind of carbs, no sugar.
And what's the argument against vegetables in it?
I'm not too sure there is I haven't looked into it that much. What the argument against vegetables is, so I can't answer yet. Really quick. I do remember reading when I first read the book. I first started looking hard at the nutrition guidelines for MTI. A book called "It's How We Get Fat" or "Good Calories, Bad Calories." And he cited a report from some explorers who had spent like 6 months or a year with Eskimos up high in Canada or Alaska or someplace. And in the winter, they ate no vegetables. And how they all kind of did just fine. You do get some carbs from meat, some from like butter. There's a little bit of dairy that's allowed. You can have cheese. I use heavy cream in my coffee, and I use butter for eggs and stuff. But it's pretty much just um, there's no caloric restriction. Um, and I haven't had any of the bad experiences. I'm not constipated. I guess fiber helps you poop or whatever. And just from what I listen to, I haven't done a lot of research. I just kind of listen to these guys, kind of the expert influencers. They talk about you don't poop as much, and one of the reasons is that you don't have as much waste. Your body's more efficient with what the fuel that you are taking in. It's been by far the easiest of all the diets I've been on. For me, I'll eat like a typical meals. I don't get like I haven't eaten like generally I don't eat until noon, and I'll have like a couple hamburger patties or a steak and like four eggs and cheese with them and salt on top, and I'm good. I do take a multivitamin every day. I don't want to get scurvy. They, the influencers say it's not an issue, but I don't know how much vitamin C I'm getting not eating any of that stuff. Palate wise, I haven't really missed vegetables for whatever reason. So it's just been an interesting experience for me so far. I haven't kept track of the weight loss that I've had, just because I just haven't been around a scale. I certainly can feel I feel lighter. One of the interesting things for me, and at least the influencers talk about this, is vegetables and the kind of carbs that come with them can help or hurt with help with inflation or not inflation inflammation. And I can tell you right now that just when I wake up in the morning and move around, my joint pain is nothing like it used to be. So that was an immediate effect, which is good. You know, my knees still hurt walking downhill. You know, my replaced hip I think is gonna something's going on with it and that hurts. You know, when I run or something. But yeah, my inflammation is definitely down. So, and I just haven't had cravings for any of the vegetables or the fruit or even the sweets. You know, I cheated one night and had a couple pieces of dark chocolate. But other than that, just haven't had it. Haven't had that type of stuff. Generally, I'll drink, water, coffee, and Diet Coke. Probably shouldn't be drinking Diet Coke, but I'm one of those. I'm like Elon Musk, I guess. I drink Diet Coke. So it's definitely not perfect, but it has been interesting. Now I'm 57. I don't know if I was your age, what you're 35 or whatever, if I would do it, might as well enjoy the food while you can. But don't be surprised when you get to my age and you're on that same diet, you're gonna balloon up because you just get bigger. And for me at my age, I've always I've struggled now for the last couple of years to just cut body mass, even muscle, and change my training quite a bit and still hovering around a 160 weight. And I'd love to get down to my, college freshman weight, which is like 145. And that 5 that would be, I think my joints would feel better. I'd definitely move better in the mountains, stuff like that. I'd lose quite a bit of strength, but my relative strength might actually go up because, strength per body weight. So I don't know if it's possible, but it's been interesting messing around with this diet. My wife doesn't even want to know about it because she's going to go apeshit on me. So I just don't tell her. And for a while, I've kind of done my own stuff. She's kind of used to me anyway. She's a foodie, and this definitely isn't a foodie diet, but it has been interesting. I guess if you're out there and you want to try it, I mean, it's kind of fun to experiment with. I like it. It is. It is again for me. For whatever reason, it's been the easiest one I've ever done. One thing is that you're not hungry. I mean, you eat a couple hamburger patties and 4 eggs, and it fills you up. And that's one of the things. I think you eat overall fewer calories just because protein just gives you is satiety like carbs can't for sure.
Yeah, yeah, that's definitely true. Are you? It'd be interesting if anybody's done cholesterol monitoring on this. I always tie this back whenever I hear anybody talk about carnivore diet to the Atkins diet, which is essentially the same thing. It's just been kind of repackaged. And he died in his 60s of cardiac arrest. So I'm always a little skeptical of these things.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. I haven't done a blood panel. I always do a annual. My birthday's in June, so every year I go see my doc and do a blood panel and stuff in June. So I'm going to do one here pretty quick and see if anything gets flagged. Of course, the influencers say their blood cleans right up from it. I think it's pretty tough to do. I think just culturally, it's pretty tough because you restaurants and let alone the whole dessert thing. But I'm not eating vegetables or fruit. And the
Yeah.
influencers say don't tell anybody what you do. Don't talk about your diet. But
And
yeah, I mean, for me, it has been interesting. So
it leans towards red meat, right? That's kind of is there a
yeah,
preference there?
yeah. If I understand correctly, that it leans towards red meat, specifically beef, primarily because you don't want super lean cuts. You want the fat. I tried the keto diet, and I couldn't do the keto diet because I couldn't eat all the fat that they wanted. It was butter and avocados and all that stuff, and it just didn't stick with me. So I don't know if I'm in ketosis right now. I don't really know if I'll get that geeky, but I haven't had any strict, like no vegetables, no fruit for like 3 weeks now. No sugar except a little bit of dark chocolate, like 70%. Feel bad about that, but I needed it for whatever reason. So I drink lots of coffee and lots. I do find I'm thirsty, so I got to drink. I do take electrolytes, and they recommend to do that. Like I do, I have noticed some cramping on my runs and stuff. So I don't know if I'm getting enough sodium or just electrolytes. I did buy some electrolytes. I've always taken electrolytes on my long endurance trips. For some reason, I'm prone to cramping. I always have that in my pack in the mountain stuff. But here I've just, started taking an electrolyte pill once or twice a day just to be sure. And then a multivitamin every day. Influencers say you don't need the multivitamin, but I can risk it. It's just a multivitamin. So we'll see how it goes and if it's sustainable. I've always wanted to be, I've seen sometimes a few athletes in my life, just guys, you get kind of super lean. It'd be interesting if I can get super lean and be sustainable with it. And again, from my perspective, it's not an aesthetic thing, but just be able to get light, I think would help my aging, honestly, and my movement and everything. And, I'm just kind of built like you, we're kind of built like fire hydrants. You're just a bigger fire hydrant than I am. You carry a lot. I mean, I know you haven't done a lot of heavy lifting for a while, and you still are big upper body from your jujitsu and stuff. That's extra mass you're packing around, and on your knees and hips and everything.
Yeah, absolutely. Extra weight your body's got to carry. There's no question about it. You had mentioned some supplement stuff that you wanted to talk about. What are you digging into?
Yeah, I recently heard a podcast by this guy named Jay Nickel. He's in a backcountry hunting world, and he kind of does gear reviews and stuff. But he did a podcast, and he really criticized supplement companies, and he got after a couple of supplement companies that kind of market towards hunters. And years ago, I had you do a research article that's compared, the supplements like Mountain Ops and Wilderness Athlete to just like regular supplements you get, and just say, hey, there's just the same thing. It's all packaging. Anyway, all supplements are a really dirty business. And it was refreshing to hear this guy kind of, point that out. There's another guy, Alex Hutchinson. He writes for Outside Magazine, and he recently wrote, maybe it's been a few months, a similar article, pointing out the issues with supplements. And we, over the years, I mean, for a while, I would get 2 or 3 emails a month from supplement companies wanting to partner with us. And we've never endorsed, a supplement a company. And the only thing that we recommend over the years is, if you want to do something, take whey protein shakes and creatine. Creatine is the most studied and successful supplement out there. It seems like there's more studies get more popular, but it's the one that has proven to be, have some effect. And then, whey protein, just if you can't get enough protein, you want to increase your protein intake. And so that was, it was refreshing to hear him, and it made me reflect back on Greg Glassman, who founded CrossFit. And I've relayed the story a couple times. But anyway, I had a gentleman come to one of my early programming courses, and he was a tactical athlete and knew Glassman personally. I had been to a couple of CrossFit certification early when Glassman was there. They were in the early ones, and he had spoken, but I don't know him personally, of course. Anyway, this individual did, and he relayed the story that Glassman had told him, hey, if I ever get in the supplement game, it's all over because it's a dirty business. And to my knowledge, at least I haven't kept up with the CrossFit, corporate or whatever. But at least when Glassman's still in charge, I never saw CrossFit Hawkins supplements, and they could have made a fortune selling supplements. He was all, like eat paleo, right? That's the one thing he kind of introduced, like a lot of people, I think, the paleo. Like, I think he did a lot of good for strength conditioning, far more good than bad. Ideally, for sure. We just had to buy some equipment for the gym in Ogden, and oh my God, talk about what he did for gym equipment prices is amazing.
Yeah,
I
for
mean,
sure.
God, when I started, just a regular rack was $4,000. Now you can get one for, I think, online for a couple $100 easy. That'll be fine for your home. And then what he did for tactical, fitness. I think you're a little young. I mean, he really did a lot for the Marines, especially. They really endorsed CrossFit early on. I think the whole, tactical strength conditioning has a lot to pay for, give back to grassroots. In fact, I asked a poll on my LinkedIn um, page, what influence he had. And there are some of the younger tactical strength conditioning coaches kind of, denied, or maybe they didn't know. Some of the old guys, 30-year, 25-year-old veterans, like, oh yeah, he was way before, tactical strength and conditioning coach was even a term.
Yeah.
Glassman was in there, and a great influence on special forces first, and then, Marines, and then big Army and everybody. But anyway, I think it's just another, credit to his genius that they didn't ever endorse supplements, and supplement industry. They're sold as a shortcut, and there are no shortcuts, and most of it is junk for sure. What's interesting about this podcast, and we'll put a link, I think, in the show notes. I'll send you the link. And I never really got into supplements too much, but this individual, I think he had done some bodybuilding, so he kind of knows, and bodybuilders are, of course, into that. And he talked about how, there will be some concoction, or some chemical which in some study may have some effect. And many supplement companies will list this chemical in their ingredients, but they won't put nearly. But the stuff's expensive, and they won't put nearly the dosage that's needed to have any effect in their supplement. So they're like, they can say they have it in there, but not enough to. And I think that was just an interesting element to that dirty supplement game I didn't realize. And just in general, again, supplements are overall a waste of money. And if you are going to do anything, just a little whey protein doesn't hurt. And I think the research on creatine is solid. But you can get like a little tub of creatine for $10. It'll last you 6 months. So you don't need to be spending a lot of money on supplements. How about back when you were in the Marines? Was there a bunch of guys doing bodybuilding supplements? Do you remember?
No, no, not really. I think there was probably some dirty steroids floating around, but no, for the most part, I think guys got it. There was a whole rash of dudes going down on kind of long events due to taking some, usually like pre-workouts, and there's a couple guys dropped dead. And so I think that sent a pretty clear message, and there was kind of a zero tolerance policy on that stuff. No, I remember the animal pack days, and God knows what was in those. I think I messed around with those in high school a little bit, but I mean, realistically, it's all branding. It's all, just different personalities endorsing different supplements, but generally they're all made in the same couple of dozen
It is so interesting.
vats.
Yeah, you can go on right now and just Google, private label supplements, and you can have your own supplement company up and going. I think they'll help you with the website and everything like that.
Yep.
So I think the same. And I don't know the statistic, but I did read or see somewhere how much of milk ends up as whey protein. It's significant. Like
Oh,
a
is
lot
that
of the
right?
milk that's produced in the U.S. ends up, it's not drunk by kids, in their cereal. It ends up as whey protein. I wouldn't be surprised if it's as much as ends up, in the grocery store for milk. Like my kids don't drink much milk. When I was a kid, we drank milk all the time. Just different, I guess, or whatever. Things change, but so it is a huge industry, but fraught with shysters. Gotta be careful.
Yeah. I mean, for those that don't know, there's really only a couple production companies in North America. And it's really, I mean, they make 90% of all the supplement brands, consolidated into, you think about how many supplement brands there are, they manufacture all this stuff. So it's kind of all the same crap put into different colored jars and bottles and
Yeah,
all
so
that
then it's
good
just
stuff.
based on marketing after that. It's like a big marketing budget, and then
Yeah.
influencers and
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah. I mean, the same could be said about that's the clothes we wear, all that stuff. It's
Yeah, I
primarily
remember
branding.
getting a call from a company's like Killcliff or something like that, some kind of a drink company started by a Navy SEAL. And I said, "Well, do you guys manufacture stuff yourself?" I said, "What is it? Energy drink?" He said, "No, it's a hydration product." Like, what's the benefits of it? Why is it better than water? I kept asking them back and forth. They could never answer. It was just, I don't know if a private equity firm, gets in this and does this to guys or what, but it's just interesting. I wanted to ask you a little bit about, you're doing the MTI brief, and it went out yesterday, and there was one study or one of the articles that caught my eye. It was the shooting study for law enforcement officers. Can you, it's really interesting what you put together there. Can you just go over that study and findings from that for me?
Yeah, it's really interesting that the increase in stuff like Substacks, personal blogs, all that stuff. There's this wealth of knowledge. So this gentleman, his his Substack is called, let me pull that up real quick, Tactical Science. And so I think he's a professor at a university, some criminal justice or something along those lines. He was a law enforcement officer, but he did a review of a academic study on a shooting performance within law enforcement trained people who've gone through an academy and through a curriculum of shooting. And kind of the bottom line up front was that the results at ranges from 3 to 75 feet, I believe, were essentially the same as your untrained shooters. So it wasn't a good look for these law enforcement officers who participated. The expert shooters represented about, I think, 25% of the total group, and they did outperform, but it wasn't by a particularly wide margin. So it was just kind of an interesting look at how firearms instruction goes, and then the follow-on training, because it's challenging for law enforcement guys to get to the range. I mean, their day-to-day job takes up all of the time, so they're gonna have time restrictions. I think there's probably, at least from my friends who are law enforcement, they take it upon themselves. So they do their own training to stay up to date, and I think that might be what's needed, because there's challenges in terms of getting to the range and all of the ammunition that you would need to perform certain courses of fire. And then just how they teach it in general appears to not, at least in this study, not be particularly proficient.
Yeah, I had a little bit of experience with this just in all the range fitness courses I put on. Several of those with law enforcement, U.S. Marshals, Border Patrol, FBI. Um, I don't know if I ever did one. Oh, yeah, I guess a Kentucky State SRT. Um, and our range fitness programming is stress-based marksmanship. And I always wanted to do a study. I never did get a chance to do it. But I wonder about the application of stress in something like shooting instruction and when stress is applied. Generally, you'll learn the fundamentals non-stressed, and then at the end of the course, they'll start applying a little bit of stress, and at the end, you'll have a FTX or whatever. And I attended I spent a couple of days at Fort Bragg with a Army officer who was in charge of the Special Forces shooting school there, Green Berets. They were going through sniper. They had a sniper course going on there, and that's kind of the way they did it. And I was there for like the FTX and got to see the final drill they did. But anyway, I always wondered if there wouldn't be a better way to do that. In other words, to introduce stress into shooting earlier, and I would do that. I would actually I actually one time took 4 women who were just regular athletes at my gym in Jackson. Like a couple of them were professional skiers, and a couple of them were just regular soccer moms, and they had really very little, if any, shooting experience. I wanted to see, just how they would do. It was interesting. It took them a while just get over the noise and the look of the AR. They were kind of intimidated by that. I remember having to stop the course, stop the drill at this or that session that day and say, okay, you guys just go take a walk and then come back for that. But they actually did pretty good in terms of just applying, because we would just in all those. I mean, I spent hours and thousands of dollars, in ammo studying range fitness, and what we found is that it all came back to primarily trigger control. And if you could, maintain your trigger control best, you were able to do well in those, the stress events that we would have. But I always wondered if it would be better to apply stress earlier in a shooting course and throughout the course instead of just at the end. And that's kind of contrary to what most people or most instruction for almost anything, where you learn the basics unstressed, you don't have them, and then once you kind of have the basics, you start applying stress. But there's two different things. One is learning the basic skill, and one is a stress inoculation that comes with applying that skill under stress. And I just haven't seen it done the way I was interested. It could be that the way it's been done forever is the best way to do it. But in my ideal study would take, a bunch of raw shooters and put one of them through a traditional curriculum where basics were taught without stress applied at all. And then at the end of the course, at the end of the sessions, there would be stress applied. versus the way I'd want to do it would be to teach basics and apply stress on basics like from day one, which is what we did in our with these women at this that kind of experiment with. Anyway, just interesting way to think about it. But what I'm hearing from you from this guy's work on this study, or what he found, was that traditional shooting courses, for at least for law enforcement guys, don't really outperform just regular shooters out there. And the law enforcement guys are supposed to be expert shooters. So
Yeah, there was a pretty significant drop, and I think important to note that the whole study was non-stressed. So it was very much a kind of flat range, draw your weapon at your pace, fire at your pace. I think there were some time constraints, but very slow enough that you can take a well-aimed shot. And yeah, once it got outside, I think it was, let's see, at 6 to 15 yards, expert accuracy dropped below 40%. So that's a pretty significant drop. I think you're right. I mean, the Marine Corps has been doing a ton. I was just reading an article about this the other day. The Marine Corps has pretty much done a service-wide change to their range process for pistol and for rifles, and that's what they're doing. Is they're introducing more stress, shorter time limits, that kind of stuff to make it more applicable. And that's on a branch-wide process. I think if from like a former infantry perspective, you never really did any shooting that wasn't stressed besides the rifle range, which is a annual requirement. And that's kind of like nobody really particularly cares about that. It's good for long range accuracy for sure, and fundamentals. But in terms of being able to fire and move and carrying kit and sprinting from cover to cover and then putting well aimed shots downrange, there was always stress, and they always did a good job of when you're setting up training, having reactive targets, whether that's a pop down target or metal or whatever the case may be, so you can accurately gauge your accuracy, your placement.
yeah, that's one thing that we found right away with our work on range fitness. We had the four stressors, a time limit, an ammo limit. So if you didn't meet the standard, you'd run out of ammo. So the stress there, right? You just have an unlimited ammo. There's a little bit of physical stress. It took us time to figure out you didn't need a lot of physical stress to, get the heart rate up. And then there was a competition. We would really like to have guys shooting side by side. And then key to that was the reactive target. We tried it with that paper targets and it just wasn't as good. We ended up going to metal targets, and you'd hear the ping, you'd hear that, and that would give you that. And it took us a while to find. I mean, at that time, it was hard to get steel targets. I mean, we were like shooting plates and stuff, or like pans trying to get it. And God, when we would travel to teach this course, we'd actually pack our targets up with us and travel with our targets because we couldn't count on what the unit had at the range. Yeah, that's really interesting to see. I'm glad to hear that was going on. We got a lot of feedback on that, and it definitely wasn't a commercial success, but all of the shooters, especially the really good shooters, they would say, this drill made me a better shooter, because eventually you would kind of tap out and you'd really have to go back to fundamentals, and that was primarily trigger control, and you get your trigger control down, and make sure your shooting platform was good, and calm down and control your breathing as best you could, and you do well. But some of our drills at the top level, with this one drill, I won't go into it now, but I never did get to top level on it. And I only saw three athletes, do it of all that we did. And one, was the coach who worked for me. And then one was sergeant in the Marine Corps. And then one was just all around. He was a military contractor at that time, but he was just an incredible marksman. And it was, yeah. And I remember him saying, "Hey, this will definitely make you a better shooter," because he missed a couple times. He got close to not getting the final standard. And he was like, "Wow, this will make you a better shooter. You got to calm down."
Yeah, it's ever evolving. As simple as, I mean, I guess there's nothing simple about ballistics and training firearms, but it seems like it's starting to come out of a eggshell that had been created for the last 50 years, particularly in law enforcement. I just hear it because I have a bunch of friends who are in law enforcement at federal and local levels, and those kind of tasks and standards seem to be sticky in terms of just institutional blocks to changing that kind of stuff. I don't know what that's about, but it's kind of interesting. I think there is some work though being done. I think there's enough people who are being critical of how that goes, and it's coming from internal avenues, which is good, right? That's where change is actually going to happen. You can scream at somebody externally, but you need that stuff to happen inside the organization, whatever size the organization might be, to really start some change there, I think.
Yeah, that reminds me. I got a call from a deputy in South Carolina, works in a rural department down there, and a part-time SWAT team. And he was asking about getting help on programming for the part-time SWAT team. And boy, this most SWAT teams across the country are part-time, where they bring in regular patrol officers and others. They get a call and they kind of form to make that counties or that cities. I know SWAT team there. Only the big cities seem to have, the big full-time SWAT teams where guys are just do SWAT stuff. And I was working with him on we're going to develop a part-time SWAT team fitness assessment and a training plan and give it to his guys and have them do it. Of course, to be on a SWAT team at rural, there's generally some type a part-time SWAT team. There's generally some type of selection, usually like a week or a weekend selection, and then you're on the team for a probationary period to make sure you gel with them. And of course, there's probably some resume and stuff like that that goes into it. But overall, the athletes who want to be on a SWAT team are likely higher performers, overall more fit. And he said that his SWAT team, ages from 30 up to 50, guys my age are on it, and fitness levels vary. And all these guys are, patrol officers, and so we're trying to develop a fitness assessment that they can do for their team, and then also just to increase the fitness culture of the team, because they only meet once a month to train together. And I went and did a range fitness course with the Fresno part-time SWAT team in Fresno, California. And it was like that for them. Even though Fresno, you think would be a bigger place, they were all part-time. And we met at the range where they do, they got to do all the shooting and everything in that one day a month that they get to do it. So it's kind of a tight schedule. But hopefully we'll be able to get this. And I think he has like half of the team that are volunteering to kind of be part of this. And we want to do, if we can, just a mini study it, not only on how effective the programming is, talk about what the assessment is. Just right now, it's just a four. I just developed this today. It's just a 4 event assessment. It's like a 1 rep max back squat, 1 rep max bench press, max rep pull ups, and what we're calling uh, a kit event, where they'll just do like 4 in-place lunges or 2 in-place lunges in kit or in their weight vest, and then 4 25-meter prone to sprint, 9 minute AMRAP. And believe it or not, that sounds simple, but that's pretty terrible. Going as hard as you can for 9 minutes, and
Yeah.
and your score is how many rounds you get. The strength events will be standardized by body weight. So you'll take like your 1 RM back squat, divide it by your body weight, and that'll give you your score. This way it can be standardized, by big guys and small guys. Anyway, it'll be exciting to see if this works out. Not only how these guys do, how much they improve over the course. Just going to do a quick, 3.5, 4 week cycle, but also if it improves the camaraderie amongst the team, as they won't be able to train together. Hopefully we'll be able to set it up so they can take the assessment at one of their month-long, training days, and then the reassessment at the next month at the month-long training day. And in between, they may be able to, they'll all be doing the training plan, but not together because they all have different schedules. They'll be doing it individually, but it'll just be interesting to see from their perspective if it not only improves their fitness, makes the team more cohesive, but also improves the fitness culture of maybe that little department.
Yeah, I know where that department is. It's way upstate. I have some friends from sorry. I have some friends from that area, so be curious to see how that goes. The challenges of the part time team are so seemingly overwhelming, right? I mean, I don't know what kind of frequency they get in training. I mean,
Yeah,
I
once a
think it's
month.
usually a month, right?
I think with their selection will have, I guess for the, I guess it depends on how many people they get. Maybe they'll have a selection, only bring on one guy, right? These guys get on these teams and stay on forever. They don't have an annual reassessment for a selection or annual fitness assessment, and so it's it's all over the place and how different departments run it. run their part-time teams. But they're expected, like Uvalde, right? I imagine they had a part-time SWAT team that responded to that. So it can go quickly from middle of nowhere to full on national news on how your team responds to, in that case, an active shooter in an elementary school. And, and they're expected to, be up to date on CQB. And, I've done one CQB course, and it's not like, I don't know if you can do that once a month and be up to skill on it. So I remember we went down and we did. Were you with me when we did the one down in Salt Lake, the Logan? I went down there and acted as a bad guy for, I think it was a Logan, Utah SWAT, part-time SWAT team, and they put me in a house and I got to shoot at them with airsoft, and those guys lit me up. They were good. So that was really interesting, being a bad guy, getting shot by a bunch of guys in their 1 month a week training. Those guys were good. At least they killed me pretty quick.
Yeah, numbers count. 10-to-1
Sure.
ratio is good, but that's what I can't remember what it is for. This is military stuff, but urban operations. I mean, you have to have an overwhelming numerical superiority, not for necessarily CQB, but for urban operations. Those two things are different. But you want to be, one guy holed up in a building can hold you up for a long time, right?
Right. Yeah. For sure. Yeah. Something like that.
I'll hit up one of these other ones that I thought was interesting, which kind of applies to us, which is this vote in Big Sky, Montana. So if you're not familiar, Big Sky is a very, very, very wealthy ski resort town that's about 45 minutes south of Bozeman, which is an expensive town in itself. And they've had massive issues with affordable housing for employees who make that resort work, essentially, and some of the, kind of fringe economics of the town itself. So they approved $60 million for 389 affordable homes for the local workforce. I'm not sure how they worked this deal, but they got somebody to sell them the land for 14% below market value. And that's expensive land right there. Yeah. So it's just kind of interesting. This has obviously happened in Jackson for quite a long time with, housing issues, and it's all over the place in Colorado and these ski towns. And I know it's kind of impacted MTI in terms of being able to retain employees and retain lab rats too, right? Because people just simply can't afford to live in these towns in the long term unless they come from some money or, have made it work one way or another.
Yeah, the economics of these places is really interesting because by far the highest source of income is non-earned income, which means that the people who reside there, their income is not being made in the town. So they're trust fund people, or they have financial stuff, or they work remote or whatever. And then they generally make much more money than the people who are having to work and live in the town. And these places, a lot of service economy stuff, and it's just a common thing across lots of. I've seen it most closely in my time in the Intermountain West, but it was accelerated with COVID as people escaped the cities and moved to places like Jackson or all over Wyoming, actually, and even some of the smaller towns where I grew up got kind of a COVID bump. Bozeman got hit by that big time. Idaho, even like Texas, right? And then when you have people moving in there, don't depend on a local job for their employment. That means they can afford a home that is more than the market would bear, which kind of boosts up housing costs and makes it unaffordable for the people who have to live there. And so in Jackson, you get this really artificial, cultural and populace where you have like three different types of people: people who get artificial income and who are able to pay the housing prices, and or not artificial income but unearned income. In other words, either he got a deal, so, or maybe even more, maybe like 2,000.
That's, yeah, I was going to say that's a good
I think
deal
it's
for
like
Jackson.
2,000 a month. I think that's what he pays, and he's splitting it with his girlfriend. And then you kind of have the people in the middle, the teachers and police and the government workers who have relatively good salaries. I think the teachers in Jackson make more than the other teachers in the rest of the state. But if and the school district does have some or some housing for
Subsidized.
them.
Yeah.
Yeah, where I think they can buy a house and own it, but once they stop teaching, they got to sell it, and they can only sell it for like 2% more a year. In other words, it's not like it's based on the market. And then you got 2 bedroom communities. So there's 2 bedroom communities for Jackson, Teton Valley, Idaho, and Star Valley, Wyoming, and those places have boomed, and their housing prices has increased you know, as people who can't afford under an income people who can't afford Jackson will move to one of those places and push it up. So, and what has happened in Jackson, I don't know if it's happened in Big Sky, is overall there's just been you get floods of people driving in to work from these 2 bedroom communities. And there's been recent, I think in Jackson, there's a new subdivision with several hundred homes, and traffic has become an issue in Jackson right now. It's kind of a big issue to think about in a small, a town like Jackson, Wyoming, but it's kind of a compressed little area, and so kind of getting urban issues with a place that has like maybe 25,000 people year round. But it's just the nature of the beast these days. So I guess and I don't know what to think about this housing for these guys in Montana. I know that in Jackson there is subsidized housing and deed restricted housing. This is going to be deed restricted, right? You have to probably have a job there to own the house.
Yeah, I
And
believe
there's been
so.
abuses of that. People will move and then rent it for. So it's hard to maintain and monitor. But what else are you going to do?
Yeah.
If you want people to. I mean, there are several employers, and I mean, in Jackson, there was years where there were a bunch of people who were working there from Moldavia, and there was like a firm that would link up employers with you know college educated people from Moldavia who would come to work on a green card or whatever for a season, and they would have housing in them, and you'd have 4 or 5 to an apartment, and then they'd leave after a season. That's one way that they've been able to get around it, but it's going to be a continual problem that lots of places are experiencing now.
Yeah, Big Sky's so interesting in itself because the resort, so there's Big Sky Resort, and then I'm blanking on the name of the private resort, which is, I mean, Bill Gates has a house there, Tom Brady has a house there, but it's
That the
completely
Yellowstone Club?
Yellowstone Club. Yeah, yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
And,
Okay. Yep.
and they've got, it's an interesting deal because, they've got
Because they have their own ski area, right?
they've got their own ski hill and their own lift, and they've got their own. A friend of mine worked for the fire department for the club and all that kind of stuff, which apparently paid very well. But there's always all kinds of controversies over it. This is kind of Montana wide, but it's highlighted in Big Sky with just the pretty significant gaps in income and housing for folks who live in that area versus these very high dollar homes. It's a challenge. I don't know what the right answer is there. I mean, it sounds like this kind of housing trust deal is something that you have to do, or otherwise the town collapses, right? You got to have somebody who's working the lifts, who's working the in a patrol car, whatever the case may be. But it's interesting.
Yeah, I do know that in Teton County, Wyoming, which where Jackson is, any new business that wants to build will have to have some type of employee housing as part of that, or any new structure that goes up. So that's kind of built in, but does it cover it all? I doubt it. I mean, these are beautiful places, and proximity is worth a lot of money. I mean, if you're into mountain sports, these are the places to be, but everybody wants to be there. And so it's just really
Right.
the market and demand pushes the price up.
Yep. That's about all I got for this one. We could talk about this one real quick. There was this interesting article from the Army War College. They've got like a blog set up where they publish some of their students and professors' work. And he made a note on the title is Unmanned Systems Are Not Revolutionary. So this is all kind of Ukrainian war based. And I've heard the same on various articles and analysis that, it's been a game changer on the battlefield, but it's still tied to operators, at various distances. And it's really kind of just turned into a tool of maneuver warfare, particularly as it relates to fires. It's just another fires tool. And the whole point of it is that the human oversight of these drones remains really important to its effectiveness on the battlefield. But then, which all makes sense. believe it. But then there was another article that I think I linked in here that a company called Shield AI, which I believe is based out of San Diego, they're a pretty up and coming defense tech startup. They're putting an AI model into Lakotas with the U.S. Army. Lakotas are used primarily as training helicopters for the Army, but it's, you can see where this is, the big revolution happens when we're able to put in thinking computers of some sort into these platforms, and then it becomes a whole different thing. So it'll be interesting to see over the next couple of years how that evolves. Piloted aircraft, drone stuff, all that goodness. It's going to be a different 10 years from now. I think it'll be a pretty different military.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah, just reading from that guy. He said that drones aren't the revolutionary thing that they're kind of made out to be, but they will be if we make them autonomous.
Right. Yeah, which is like happening now.
So AI will decide whether or not to fire or not without some person between it. And do you know if there's like a formal Geneva Convention thing about that, or is there kind of agreement, or is it so new that there's been nothing out there about that yet?
Geneva Convention's about 100 years old, so I don't think it's been amended
Probably
anytime
not.
recently.
No new. Yeah, so there, I don't know if there's any new because we've done studies in a RET and talked about this before about controversy of whether or not to make these unmanned systems autonomous so they can decide on the target and act, or they can identify a target and kill the target on their own without human intervention. And now all of a sudden you can see if you can set that up. I remember linking to like it was a video, and this was several years ago, about these drone swarms. And like this, someone like drilled a hole in the wall and put all these little tiny drones. They went in there. They all had like a little tiny charge, and they went into this like lecture hall and just went in and whacked everybody in there. It was terrifying to watch.
Yeah.
But something like that happening, I guess we can probably expect the Chinese are working on it. I hope we are too, if they are. But it seems like if I understand correctly, if you have a drone aircraft, it can take G forces more than any pilot could. So now all of a sudden you have a very maneuverable aircraft that can outmaneuver any pilot because the pilot just can't take the G forces. And there it'd be ideally you could build them really cheap and just put more of them out there. I think everybody kind of understands. So it was a little interesting that I saw that story. I didn't read the story, but I saw your summary that this guy doesn't think it's revolutionary yet until it becomes autonomous. I don't know. I just think about the terrifying look of the videos you see of the Russian soldiers on the ground trying to, shoot a tiny drone that's trying to drop a grenade on them, and how terrifying that must be for them to be in that situation where even in camouflage you're not hidden. That was, I
Yeah.
guess, he certainly has a contrarian view.
Yeah, they're doing all kinds of testing at the Army's NTC, which is up in California, big desert. That's where they do all their major maneuver um, training. And that's, I guess, I was just listening to something that they're really focusing on concealment from these kinds of platforms, and it's hard. It's really, really hard. So it'll be interesting to see how the services evolve around these new upcoming threats, and I don't know, brave new world stuff for sure.
Well, I did see, I don't know if you saw, but I think there was a Russian jet that was shot down by a missile that was launched from a Ukrainian naval drone,
Yep. Yeah.
something like that, right? So, they lost a pilot and a very expensive jet, from a toy ship out there with a missile on it. So the economics is, you can see where the economics should go, it seems. So
Not to mention
every
that they sunk the entire Black Sea fleet with
drones, yeah,
small homemade. I mean, like made in your garage type sea drones, which is
so small
pretty
they didn't
wild.
show up, and then if they did, it'd be difficult to. And there's so many of them. Yeah, terrifying.
Yeah, for sure. Well, on that positive note, you got anything else?
Nope, that's it. I would say that I think if you're listening to this, you have any questions for us at MTI about our programming or just anything, Charlie, if you can put your maybe email in the show notes, and maybe we'll do a Q&A session. That'd be great.
Yep. Sounds good.
All
All right.
right.
Thanks, Rob.
Take care.